This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl. It is the dog days of summer, Timothy.
Correct. And I think dogs are the only things that haven't attacked humans in recent days, I should say. There's been so many animal attacks, at least in the news. There was the
Well, let's stick with the weather for a minute because
okay, all right, fine.
the last time the Earth was this hot
Yeah, I know, hottest day
was
ever.
125,000 freaking years ago, before basically human civilization appeared.
Right.
So, I mean, the temperature is just spiking and it continues to spike. And I mean, the years between 2015 and now were the hottest on record. This past June was the hottest, definitely on record, and it's causing all sorts of problems. I mean, for instance, the gnat attack in New York. There's a giant sandstorm in China, and actually, a sandstorm from the Sahara is headed this way, but probably more towards the Caribbean. And of course, crop failure is going to be in
Well,
there.
I mean, and then of course the permafrost is melting up in Canada, and there's a lot of wildfires that are kind of out of control, and we're
Yeah, I'd never heard of Canada having so many wildfires.
well, they're blanketing half the United States.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah,
coming back down around this way any day now.
hooray.
Yeah, well, millions are under heat alerts right now. And some of the heat indexes are just ridiculous. I mean, they're 110 degrees, etc.
Yes. So yes, this is these. Well, I'm not a climatologist, but these warnings and models, all kind of happen, and I guess are we experiencing it now? It seems like that's the case. Hottest day
I
ever.
think we're experiencing it now. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
exactly. Well,
Well, sometimes in such hot days, people reach for a cold one. Well, Nicole Snidecki, Snidecki, I don't know how you say her fucking name, 39. So she's Indiana. She's looking for a job, and there's a job opening at the county sheriff's office. And she goes down there and does her interview, and they start realizing during the interview that she's slurring her words and is reeking of alcohol. So then they arrest her because she was drinking and driving. So she showed up to the interview drunk and drove there, and gave them no choice but to arrest her. So I don't know what she was thinking with that one, but I don't think she was
well,
thinking
she
at
wasn't
all.
thinking, and I don't know what the United Nations nuclear watchdog are thinking, as they have just officially approved that
Oh
Japan
yeah,
can
Fukushima.
release radioactive water from Fukushima into the Pacific Ocean. I really, and especially this comes right when what just came out in the last 2 days, that 45% of US drinking water is full of forever chemicals. And
Yep.
at the same time, big freaking deal. Chemical companies have just been, they're going to pay $1.2 billion. I mean, that's like you or I paying $10 for the damage they've done. It just makes no sense. And here we go.
Forever chemicals. That's a pretty ominous and creepy uh
Yeah, well,
description name. Yeah.
it's in
I, I
everything
I
we
mean,
know it.
the Fukushima thing, I was thinking about that. I mean, it's basically like they have no choice. I mean, the damage is done. They have to release it somehow, and they're like, and they just keep it there. That's fucked too. They don't know what to do. They really
Yeah,
they don't know what to do. It's
yeah.
it's it's a
Well,
disaster.
and I mean, the chemical manufacturers. I mean, it has some of the worst, of course, DuPont, Chemours, Corteva. I mean, it's such a small amount, especially when there are these chemicals in so many things: cleaning supplies, cosmetics, nonstick pans, just basically about everything. And in spite of that, we're living longer, of course. Thank you, with a lot more cancers. What do you
Well,
expect?
also, it's just, I mean, this is all brand new, like just general society living this long, and we don't really know what to do, and it's like forcing a square through a circle. Everyone feels kind of stressed out and deformed in their brain, and like, oh, what are we? So we're kind of like the real time lab rats of just civilization living longer. It looks real good so far, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, in the meantime, I'm going to be having a mighty good time all the way around. What can I say?
Well, you are, and you do. But going back to my original point, the amount of well, the stories are so sensationalized, which makes me excited. That's the point. But
we're talking about dog attacks.
well, no, because I don't have one of those, but I do have multiple animal attacks. Well, so South Carolina, a woman, 4th of July, walking her dog. If you're living around there and you're walking a dog, like keeping it near like the edges of a swamp, it just feels like that's a bad idea. Well,
I'm thinking too much.
A 9-foot alligator came and massacred her. Yeah, killed her. 69-year-old just massacred her. 5 shark attacks in New York over the weekend. Within 24 hours, 5 shark attacks. Now they're just bites, little bites.
Any specific kind of sharks?
Well, none of them were actually witnessed. I think the ones in Long Island. Well, so there's 3 in Fire Island. So Kismet, where I'm going on Wednesday, actually had one. There's a 15-year-old boy was bitten. He's like, "What's this?" Came out and he had like teeth holes in his leg, and then another 15-year-old, a girl in Robert Moses Beach, same kind of thing happened. They think those are sand tiger sharks. It's pretty murky, not tiger sharks, because that'd be very different. Sand tiger, they're just biting, swimming off it.
I mean, they probably bite just to check it out, and they realize human flesh tastes crappy.
Well, so there you go. Now there was one in Quogue, and that's out near the Hamptons, and that's when you get the great whites. In fact, they said they don't know what it was, but it was definitely a much larger one. Yeah, that's great white territory over there. There was 2, the Pines and Cherry Grove. Those are kind of the gay sections, if you will, of Fire Island, fun places. Although the Pines is more like Republican, chiseled face Wall Street types, and then Cherry Grove's like kind of like South Beach drag queens, all stuff. But I'm digressing. That's there was 2 bites there, but no one died.
2 bites.
2 bites. 2 people got bitten. No one died. The story that I like the most for animals attacking was this island off of Connecticut. I actually didn't really know about it, but it's like a little national park. Blah blah blah. You have to go there by boat.
Right.
There's some couple, and I don't know if it was scouts. They're kind of like doing some kid camping thing. And the main chaperone guy thought it'd be kind of fun and cool to sleep in a hammock. And then around 2 a.m., a bobcat pounced on him and started fucking him up. And I think they ended up killing it. And then they tested it. The thing had rabies, because this is not normal behavior. Now the park ranger, who's probably some environmentalist and stuff, as she probably should be, was like, "This is so rare. Don't get worried about it." Blah blah blah. It's only the 5th one in Connecticut this year. It's like, wait a second. That doesn't sound very rare. But okay.
Well, terrifying. Now we got the button blue jellyfish washing
up. Those
are cool. In Texas. I mean, they're quite beautiful, but not very nice. They're not a button, and when they pressed, actually bad idea. Tentacles are armed with stinging cells, of course, and it isn't really even a jellyfish. It's a colony of creatures called hydrozoans that work together. So it looks like one creature.
So it's Portuguese man of war. It sounds like
kind of is. I
think because Portuguese man of war are not jellyfish. It is a colony. You have this like bubble balloon thing, and they have all those tentacles, and there's like just all this shit living in there, just waiting for something to come by and snag up and chow down.
There you go. There's also been a big spate recently of whales knocking people out of their boats. So even the whales are pissed off.
Those are killer whales, right?
Yeah, the killer whales.
Yeah. They're
living up to their name.
I know the Strait of Gibraltar, right around there. It's there's a whole pack of teenagers that just keep on harassing yachts. And
can you blame them?
Well, they're not just like ramming him. They're so smart that they got they figured out the rudder is how those boats move. Or I don't know what but they know where to go. they know what to do. They rip that thing off, and then the sailboat just floating there. They're helpless. So they kind of know. They kind of know what's up. It seems like. I mean, or that's just a coincidence. I don't know why they're going after the rudder.
Well, as opposed to going to the beach, summer is a good time to just lie down and read a couple of books, which is why this month we pretty much have mostly writers with new volumes out. I'm happy to report that, especially the one coming up today, Craig Clevenger's book, Mother Howl, which is definitely a more than guilty read. It's
Oh,
fantastic. So
fantastic. Fantastic.
that's
Get
basically I'm locked in my bedroom with my hand fan and a long cool one, just trying to.
And I would also like to dedicate this episode to Rick Froberg, who is a guest of ours and a
Right.
personal friend of Simon and myself. And he passed away over the weekend, and it's in his sleep, as far as I know. And they say natural causes. I don't know, but he'll be missed. He was very young, talented, and
He was
yes,
also a very nice guy. He was just a very sweet person. He was
very, very, very nice guy, and he will be missed.
Well, we
Yeah,
also lost Monty Kazaza, who's one of my favorite people on the planet, who just recently passed as well, which is another sad day. And Peter Brotzman this week as well.
Yeah, well,
So
that was a little more expected, but it's such an incredible contributor. So and of course, Bill Clinton's favorite sax player. That's still a mystery. Like Bill Clinton being Bill Clinton, when they asked him who's your favorite sax player, because he plays sax, quote unquote, he's like Peter Brotzman, and I'm like, what? What?
Yeah.
That's bizarre. But okay.
Freaky deaky. I don't know. Well, we're preparing for our West Coast implosion coming up from the 14th of July to the 26th, there and about in the East Bay and in Los Angeles. I'm looking forward to that. Maybe it'll be cooler on that coast than it is here.
Well, it'll be cool because we're gonna be there. So
That's absolutely true. I don't know. Not much else on this front.
I guess this is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl. Stay cool
Episode
out there.
208.
Yes.
And that's all we got to say. So enjoy the coming reading from Craig Clevenger. This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and I am so very excited. Craig Clevenger is our guest, author of the Contortionist Handbook, Dermaphoria, and recently released just this month, Mother Howl. And I have to say, this is a work of unbelievable genius. I've never said that to anybody on this podcast. And before I even invite you to say anything, I have to say this. It's so weird because last week we had Nolan night, and out of the blue, I just mentioned your name. But 2 weeks before that, I had given my drummer both of your first two books out of the blue, out of 100 books to choose from. I said, oh, take these. And then when I was talking to Nolan, who was sent to me by my ex-booking agent, I mentioned you, and he said, oh, I'm reading with him. I'm like, what? And then when I contacted you, you said, did my publisher contact you? Oh, my ears were ringing. I'm like, no, maybe it went into the hole. So I don't know. We call it the connective tissue here on the Lydian Spin. And welcome, Craig Clevenger. How are you?
Living the dream. Thanks so much for having me and putting up with the little hiccups at the onset of this. I'm pretty savvy with I think most everybody is with Zoom video calls at this point, but maybe I shouldn't update right before one of these just to be safe.
You know what?
Okay.
Technical difficulties, who cares? It happens. So you're going to be reading at Book Soup, that's in LA, July 14th with Nolan Knight, our last guest. This is kind of our writer's month. How do you feel about public readings?
It's been a long time and the landscape has changed. I enjoy them. I like connecting with readers because it's unlike musicians where you've got a live audience there. I really enjoy it. Sometimes if the venue isn't right, or if I'm reading something, I've made the mistake maybe twice reading something that was a little close to the bone for me, and I didn't realize that till I started talking out loud. But I enjoy it. I think the landscape's changed now, where a lot of people are very cynical about expecting to move a lot of books with a reading having a huge turnout, and I'm not doing that. I'm there like assuming that just playing the lottery, maybe one person there is going to have some sort of domino effect elsewhere. If that, I'm trying not to use the word influencer.
I love what you said in one of your interviews, that you just have to kind of prepare yourself for failure on all fronts, because you never fucking know. You can write the greatest book in all of history, and die and not be remembered or even thought of while you're alive. Same with music, same with everything. And it's, look, we're not writing for the approval of anybody. We're writing because we have to get the fucking poison out of our bloodstream.
That's, I think that really sums up every workshop I could have ever held. The one question I've never been able to answer, I don't get it too often. I think most people know better, but why do you write? And I don't know. If I knew why I wrote or why I wrote about the things I write about, I wouldn't be doing it.
Oh, I know why you do it.
To
Because
get
if
the
you
poison out.
didn't, you might be hurting people or yourself.
True enough.
Okay, you do it because we have to do it. It is a lonely sport. It is a thankless occupation. It can make any man poor. And I was thinking while I was reading, I love Mother Howl. I'm halfway through it. I just got it 2 days ago. Yeah, it's so fantastic. We're going to go into that in a minute. I read the acknowledgments in the end of the book, and I'm like, you must have been couch hopping.
Yes.
Because I, in my late 50s, was a nomad for 4 years. And I'm like, what the hell? And I mean, I think of that kind of as the writer's dilemma anyway. I mean, we weren't smart enough to go to Tunisia or Morocco where maybe we could live on $50 a month, like the Beats. Nobody supported us for the end of our life. Hopefully it's not tomorrow, like they did Herbert Hunky up the Chelsea Hotel. It's a poor man's game.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that I meet, people starting out who have aspirations of fame and fortune. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope they hit it, because some people do, but that is just a speck in the grand
Yeah.
scheme of things. That never happens. I mean,
it's like composers. I mean, they basically name, besides maybe Philip Glass in terms of like serious music composers,
right.
that are making a living off of composition. I mean, everyone has to be a professor.
Right.
They have to teach. They have no choice.
Well, and also, is it true that the Contortionist Handbook it's out of print in the U.S.?
It is, and I'm hoping Mother Howl kind of lights a fire under someone to bring it back. Yeah, it is out of print, and it was for a long time. It was like I was just a ghost. It was really frustrating. But hopefully, the Handbook and Dermaphoria will return.
No, they came out in 2005 and 2008. I don't know how I came upon your books because I don't really read much fiction at this point. I mean, obviously read a lot when I was younger and had more time. I don't know how I came across them, but I've told people repeatedly over the years about them. And I didn't know you had a new book until Nolan, the connective tissue of Nolan Knight. I was so excited. And so tell me a little bit about that. So in between 2008 and now, I mean, you wrote some short stories. You were getting published.
I'm not terribly prolific, but more than that, up until Mother Howl, I didn't have an agent. I made the mistake of going into that first publisher without an agent. And in hindsight, there are some very successful exceptions to that, and I know there are bad agents out there, just like there's bad anything. But if anyone is ever talking to a publisher, especially the smaller ones, the bigger ones want you to have an agent. But whenever somebody says, look, we'd like to deal with authors directly, that's the publisher's version of the cops saying we don't need to get lawyers involved, do we? And that's what screwed me. So yeah, after my publisher went under, it was a long headache getting the rights back. And once I did, I didn't have anybody to rep them, and one thing led to the other, and it was just kind of yesterday's news for a while.
You know how it benefits me to go with a smaller label like Akashic or Seven Stories is because I'm on tour, I can sell the books, and I can make more money selling my own books than they're going to make selling my books. I sell more of my own books than these independent labels do, but at least they keep them in print, because the largest company I worked with pulped the remainers and didn't even tell me.
Oh, it's a drag.
But that's what happens. And it's a shame that, and I think that with Mother Howl out, hopefully Contortionist Handbook and Dermaphoria will come back out. Is Dermaphoria still in publication?
No, they were both out with the same. They're actually in print overseas still. I over the years, I was getting modest royalty checks for the Handbook and Dermaphoria, which is really weird. I wrote them 20 years ago. So if you live in the UK, or I think the latest, I think Macedonia was the
whoa.
And every time that was the latest sale for a foreign sale of Dermaphoria. And every time I look it up on the map, it never stays. So I don't even know where it is. Um, so it's in print overseas everywhere but my home here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and welcome to the club. It's exactly the same reason I have to release my own reissues or compilations of music, because I don't want to deal with them and they don't want to deal with me, but we do what we do. So
going back to the reading and performance, kind of a two-part question. Did you or do you ever go to other writers' readings? And how conscious are you in terms of tempo and how you present it? I mean, it's like when I try to read Ulysses, I'm like, what the hell's going on? But when I heard an expert do it at that rate and just knew how to do all the rhythm and all that stuff, I'm like, holy shit, this is a whole other fucking thing. Are you really focused on how you do that, or are you just kind of straight down the middle?
Absolutely. Even back in my college days, it would grate on my nerves if I went to an open mic night and I would watch people flip through their notebooks like, what should I read next? I mean, musicians, y'all would never dream of getting in front of an audience and without practicing or doing anything. In fact, I was penalized, quote unquote, at the San Francisco Literary Death Match years ago. The judges said, it sounds like you rehearsed that. And I did. I read through it multiple times out loud.
Fuck?
Yes, I've got an audience. Of course I'm going to rehearse it. And I've never understood I'm not a performer naturally, but I think it's just a matter of respect for the people that have come there to see you. Polish it, keep it, get the timing right. Don't overstay your welcome at the microphone. And again, I'm not an actor. I'm not going to get very theatric, but I'm at least going to know where to pause, where to hit harder. I'm going to rehearse, and that's considered like uncool, I guess, in some.
I guess we're
No,
just fucking uncool, aren't we? Just uncool.
Well, that's just like this. I mean, that judge. Not that we have to focus on that, but what planet are they living on?
I don't know. I mean, again, there is no other art form, performing art form, where rehearsing is considered, maybe improv theater, right? But otherwise,
well, improv is totally different than what we're talking.
No, but improv theater or even improv music, there's such a lifetime of experience behind it. So it's even real improv. You're just kind of,
and this is also a big difference in it. Is improv music, you have to be really in tune to the moment. If you've already written something, you have to be in tune to that rhythm in that moment, not flubbing around. Have you taught workshops in writing or before?
I've taught them online at the Chuck Palahniuk website, which became spun off with Lit Reactor.
I offer a Fight Club, one of my favorite films ever.
Yeah,
as well.
Fight Club and Jim Foley's adaptation of Jim Thompson's After Dark, My Sweet are the two most faithful book to film adaptations I know of. I do run. I work at a public library, and my contribution to the community program is running a writing workshop there. Most people, there's a handful of people with some publishing credentials, and everybody there kind of runs the gamut of experience and ambition. Some people they're there to be therapeutic. Some people just need a platform and want to be heard. Other people really want to hone their craft. So it's formal in that there's a structure, but I'm not grading or hitting anybody hard. But I do that once a month at the library where I work now.
That's great. I mean, and I take a sideways step in that I do workshops with how do you perform what you've written. And one of the best tools for that is reading people what they wrote, because writing it, you don't hear it. Unless you're reading it to your cat, like I used to do. I know you got a cat. The
cats are great audiences. Yeah.
The cat's gone deaf, doesn't want to hear it anymore. But I think it's very important in teaching, how do you perform it? Because a lot of it is in that, without being a performance act, it's in the delivery. It is in the delivery. And also just when people hear their own work, they get a better understanding of what needs to be edited or added or changed. And I think we are serving very important public services with what we do on the side.
And plus, every audience is different. So it's, when I read something to a group, to an audience, I'm going to tailor it according to the response I'm getting from that audience. I'm not going to read it to the same way I read to my cat. If people are laughing at something that I see the funny part in that, I'm going to make sure that I know where else that stuff is going to happen. If I see people nodding or smiling at something, most of the time when I used to read from the handbook, almost universally, when I would describe, my description of a Vicodin high, I would always glance up and see people nodding, and I would just always pause and say, "Gotcha." You all know. It's personal. I'm not getting up there like an actor with a stage play, although I'm sure they have nuances, night to night as well. But I'm not just reading aloud something I've rehearsed and polished. I'm also communicating personally with the group I'm talking to.
And sometimes that's 1, 3, 5, 10 people.
Yeah.
But those are the people that really need to hear or read or be connected to what you're doing. Absolutely. Yeah. I always love it when people laugh at my spoken word, because I'm mostly laughing, even though it's, basically a forensic horror show. When anybody laughs, I'm like, they really get it. They got it. I mean, and often people are too nervous to laugh, which is ridiculous. They don't know that actually, I'm show folk. It's what I do. Just right. Don't confuse it. It's okay to laugh or cry. People do cry.
Sure.
I like tears.
That's another one.
Tears are welcome. Tears are welcome.
So you grew up in Southern California, but you're born in Texas.
Correct,
did you move at a very young age, or like?
Yeah. I mean, I learned late in life, actually after it got published, that as far as Texas is concerned, I'm one of theirs. That birth certificate is mine. That's it. You're a Texan. I never really think about it one way or the other. We left when I was very young, and I think I had a bit of a drawl twang wherever it is in there when I was like 2, couple of years on the East Coast. But since I was about 6, I've grown up in Southern California, probably the least bohemian and bio-worthy existence you can imagine. But yeah, that's
what area?
Orange County.
Yeah, I said the least bio-worthy.
Irvine.
No, Irvine adjacent in Tustin, the part of Orange County that nobody's heard of. That's how deep in suburbia I was.
But okay, so you're there. Yeah. What are you into in your teenage years? Because a lot was going down in California. I mean, from the 60s, the 70s, and even the 80s. Yeah. So when did you become aware of either music that was the escape for your, existence in the rotted suburbs of Los Angeles, or literature? What first turned you on, and when, and what was it?
I was musically, I was not cool. I'm going to come right out with that, and I say that with all due respect for people I know who still love that kind of. I was a metalhead, For me, that
talk to Tim. He loves metal.
Well, okay. There's quite a variety of metal. It's
true enough.
So go ahead, though. But we can talk about that.
But I mean, it's like that was right at the top of the punk revolution, like when the Sex Pistols first came out and flung the pig snout and everything. And
I never liked punk rock. I'm no way. But go on. So what metal? Because there is many forms of metal, like there's many forms of punk rock. So who specifically really?
Well, I mean, in terms of like the hardcore gods back then, it was AC/DC, Black Sabbath. I mean, really no surprises. I was a very earnest young man, and so Rush appealed to me in that respect. All the intellectual, I don't mean to, put that label on myself, but I mean all the dork nerds, loved Rush. In hindsight, I can see it. Fantastic musicians, and I'm sure Neil Peart's a lovely dude, but I can see a lot of it for the libertarian horse shit that it is in hindsight. What else? Books. It was honestly it wasn't idyllic where I grew up. On the surface it is, and anything that's that polished and nice on the surface means on the inside it's fucked up. So I read a lot of really like deep fantasy stuff simply to escape. Just
starting when you were 12, 14?
Oh yeah, really young. And just to escape, because I didn't see the point in anything that was rooted in reality, because I hated reality. It wasn't until I stumbled across James Cain, and by extension Jim Thompson and the rest in college, as I've said before, I read fantasy to escape, but I discovered noir, and that told me what I've been escaping from.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and also gateways are gateways, and I talked to Lydia about it. She had determined her aesthetic at a very young age, but as a musician, I can maybe relate to you. I was just exploring everything I could explore and made my commitment a little later, which is totally fine. I mean, you're just taking it in until something really strikes a chord.
I was going to say, taking in as much as you're allowed to listen to certain things in the house. There's that.
Were your parents pretty strict with what you were? You really religious growing up?
Vigorously strict Roman Catholic. So Roman Catholic, Orange County suburbia. So all the stuff in here was just waiting to explode, and it did when I moved out. And I think
so. No wonder you liked heavy metal, because heavy metal is kind of like a theatrical rebellion.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Satan. I mean, and all that shit. I mean, come on.
By the way, I will send you my version of War Pigs, where Weasel plays every instrument. It's on my Bandcamp. It's amazing, I have to say.
Cool.
Yeah, that's
true.
So
do you have a good relationship with I don't know if they're alive, but if they are, with your parents at this point?
My I'm never going to get personal here. This is fun. My father died a year ago, November. And no, I'm not close with my mother, and I know that's like blasphemy. But and whenever somebody says, it's you only get one family, or all this kind of nonsense,
wrong.
You
family get to choose who your family is, actually.
Yeah, I'm fortunate to be very close with my siblings. I think because there are enough of us, we could all compare notes as we got older, because you have no frame of reference when you're a kid, right? We all compared notes, and so no, that's really it.
I think there's nothing like the relief of when they're all dead. Myself, I'm just saying. That's just me. That's just me. They're gonna die anyway. Go ahead. I'm older than both my mother and father. They died early. You know what? Not sorry to see you go. Just saying. And the misery.
Yeah, it's the Catholicism, and again, what I was escaping from. Looking back,
in Mother Howl, I mean, that's exactly what it's about. It's about a son escaping his father's heinous legacy of murderous acts. That's one part of it,
right?
The other part is it is almost an anti-religion of this other character who thinks he's tuned in to an alternative reality of actually a divine psychedelia. So beautiful, those passages.
Do you have a lot of anger towards this upbringing, and if so, is your writing help that?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's not as much active anger. I'm old enough now to really not necessarily grind the axe, because that's looking backward. It's not helping.
One down, one to go of the parents.
But what at this point, the perspective I have is like, I know how that informs my writing now. I would love to have been different, and I don't think it's necessarily a choice between, when the whole myth of the tortured artist, and people from any kind of like horrible background make the greatest art. I think that's bullshit. I think I'd still be a writer regardless.
Well, excuse me, tell me one happy motherfucker that made really great art. I'm still trying to find that guy.
Okay, yeah, good challenge. But the one off the top of my head, the only one I can throw at you would be Christopher Morris. I don't know if you know him. He's in the UK. I don't know. He's done a lot. The thing I remember most, he did a UK satire show in the early '90s called Brass Eye. And it is the most brilliant news satire ever. You know how British are just better at that anyway. And he is just absolutely just a bloody genius.
We got one on the table.
Well, what about you, Lydia? You're pretty happy.
Well, I mean, this is my rebellion, and it's also the reason I have a documentary artist, depression, anxiety, and rage, because I don't have those things. My rage I take to the stage. I found the key out because I saw the bigger picture, that torture is the universal form of existence. It is the cancer of birth. And the only way to rebel against the trauma inflicted on you by not only the world, but their intimate others, is to rebel with pleasure and clean yourself out of all of the toxins that other people have put inside you, which were also put inside them in this genetic hangover that goes on all the way back to the cave. That's just what I just rebel.
I like genetic hangover. That's a good term. And at this point in my life, I've also abandoned this notion that happiness is a static state. It's a thing where everything is kind of going a certain way or a certain comfort level. I've really learned that happiness is retrospective. It's something when you look back and go, yeah, those were the good old days, you know, that course. So my goal is always to put myself in that flow state, whether it's writing or something else. That's when I look back. And I mean, no chess player or athlete is, if you stop a mid game and say, hey, are you happy right now, they're gonna be annoyed. But they are happiest, yeah, right. They're going to be happiest when they're not thinking about anything else. They're in that headspace of that flow space. And so for me, happiness,
is flowing and not
Yeah.
being stymied or stuck. To me, it's not about happiness. It's about appreciation, because as natural born gluttons who, you know, just want more and more of everything, speaking exactly about myself, you have to sort of unlearn that and be able to appreciate. Because if you don't appreciate what there is, and look, I focus on the negative in my work. That's what I do. Somebody's got to articulate the apocalypse.
Right.
But in my day-to-day life, I have to fucking appreciate things, because if I don't, I'm ripping myself off. Because there's a lot of shit you can't appreciate. And trust me, there's a lot of shit I complain about, but I get paid to do that. So
okay,
I can't afford to pay me to espouse my happiness. Just saying. Too expensive. Why don't we have a reading right now, Craig? And I'd imagine this is from your absolutely fucking, I am obsessed with Mother Howl, your latest
thank you.
outrage. It's really beautiful, I have to say. It's
Thank you. How long?
if I can use that term.
I want to keep these brief. This is shorter. I listened to your interview with Nolan. I was going to say, Tim, you're a dead ringer for an old buddy of mine, and it's really weird looking at you on screen.
Oh,
and it's
no.
like Mark. It looks like Mark. No, you're not Mark. It's wow. You got a doppelganger. He's a lovely human.
I'm sure he is. I always hate when people say that. I'm like, oh no, there's someone else that looks like me. But whatever, I'll take it.
He is one of the sweetest humans alive. So it's a good thing.
Okay.
I often don't even look like myself.
Now we're talking.
All right.
Let me try this.
This is a passage from Mother Howl by Craig Clevenger. Thank you.
Let's see if I can squeeze it. Let's see. And the signal was strong. His surroundings broadcast clearly. Floor and ceiling, the texture of his clothes and skin all maintained fidelity regardless of shifting sunspots or local interference. Plumbing droned and shook the walls. Telephones rang, intercoms crackled, pagers chirped, and security doors buzzed. Patients coughed, cried, sang, and screamed above the television playing cartoon music. Every sound sustained by its echoes from painted brick and bank tellers' glass. The most far-gone patients shuffled about in second-hand bathrobes, observing each step as though walking for the first time. Others were poorly tuned, their brains and bodies dialed to some nether point of noise between their common frequency and the full bandwidth of the Mother Howl. The old woman appeared first, her face seized in pain, and her eyes fixed wide on some private bygone loss. She clutched her breast to keep the pieces of her heart from scattering. She never ate, never moved from her corner of the day room, and no one attended to her. Whatever horror had driven her to the care of the system remained beyond its reach, but inseparable from her, and her faulty tuning made her smallest movement stutter or freeze, then skip. The old woman wiped her eyes, then locked motionless for a moment, flickered like a weak candle flame, and then she blinked from view. Empty chair, scuff marks on wallpaper. She reappeared in a sandstorm haze of static, still mourning.
Beautiful. Now, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
All of your books, all three, have really a psychedelic, and this one especially, extremely psychedelic hook in to people tuned into alternate realities, whether it's through the fiction they create out of their life from lying or forging, or the fact that they wake up in a hospital and don't know how they get there due to, I don't even need to go into the details of that, read the fucking books, or this, semi delusional but extremely articulate creature that might have just, in his opinion, dropped out of nowhere into flesh and bone reality. How many drugs have you done?
The funny thing is, the opening of the handbook, that opening line was actually the second or third chapter in the very earliest draft. And I have a rule that has always served me well, that just, when you finish something, flesh it out, lop off the first paragraph or page, and chances are the reader can figure it out. But that line came from me thinking about, here I am trying to write about this drug addict. And I thought to myself, I mean, the amount of drugs I've done, you can count on one hand. And that's where that came from. I've done very few. I've done my share of hard drugs. I have never done psychedelics. I have a rule: monsters don't come out of the box unsupervised.
Wait a minute.
But you don't know. You don't know.
Let me just repeat that to you. Monsters don't come out of a box unsupervised.
My monsters, I'll deal with them, but not.
Are you afraid of psychedelics?
Oh yeah. Oh
no,
yeah. Think of it this way. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think I think you're coming from a point of literal ignorance, because you haven't done it. It's fine. It's not
right.
And so maybe liberating these monsters might not be such a bad idea.
But wait a minute. I fear that if you actually did psychedelics, maybe your writing wouldn't be a psychedelic.
Maybe my job isn't to, you don't have to kill someone to write a murder mystery, right? It certainly helps, but it's not necessary. If I ever, first of all, everything you've read and all the impressions you have of it, keep in mind that's me sober. Now, so keep that in mind. If they came out, who knows? If I ever, and never say never, but if that ever happens, I swear it's going to be an enclosed, safe environment with a really good looking woman like guide, and at least 3 or 4 kittens to kind of,
Craig, I'm volunteering and I'll bring the kittens.
Yeah, kittens. Then let's.
But Craig, I mean, it's like, say you've never tried spirits before. I mean, you can have one whiskey. You don't have to drink a whole fucking bottle. So you can you could just dabble a little bit.
I mean, understand. I completely understand. But as somebody who's done acid over 100 times, I mean, I'm about as sane as you can get. I want to get back to a few things we were talking about before. When I first emailed you after speaking to Nolan Knight, you said, did my publisher contact you? Why would they have? Was I on your mind?
Yeah, I read somewhere a while back that you were a fan of my early work. And when I say a while back, does anyone remember MySpace? That's how long ago this was.
Of course I remember it. Yes.
Yeah, right. So again, I'm not cool. So I knew your name. Obviously, I knew you were, demi status, god status in I don't know, punk is the right word, but that whole, I knew you had major stature. No wave. I like that. And then, I think I found you on Instagram or something. Instagram. And I guess
it's so perfect, because all of this attention to each other happened in the last few weeks, which was to me, it's kind of perfect. So also back to the couch surfing. So I mean, writers, money, please. What were you doing to support yourself for the past 15 or 18 years? Various things, couch surfing. See, as I'm a juggler, so I have many different fields I can plumb to support my other fields. But writers are usually just writers. They have to have a fucking day job. They have to have jobs.
So for a good chunk, for about a decade, little less, I was up in the Bay Area, I was up in San Francisco. And I had a number of bartending jobs there that got me by. And my publisher had this, they had this agreement. It was a handshake agreement that they were good about it, more or less. I had to chase them every month, but they would sort of calculate my trajectory of sales and give me a monthly stipend, which was cool. Had I not done that, I probably would have lost, God knows how much in royalties had I not gotten it up front. So it was that monthly stipend that I had to hassle them every month for, because I was passing up bartending shifts. So it was between bartending and that got me by. But right around 2007, one of the bars that I was working at went under, and the other one they moved, but there was a long dark period. They got plowed over an eminent domain, bullshit move from the city. So between that and my publisher going under, I just kind of was suddenly high and dry. So
it happens to musicians, it happens to writers, visual artists. People don't realize, no matter how great the art is, no matter how people love it, how many it sells, we often are in the fucking hole of our own existence, sleeping on couches.
I've often said, I'm sure this applies elsewhere, but I've said writing is one of the only professions where you can get fan mail and collections notices on the same day. And I think that pretty much sums everything up,
I mean, music. Come on, there's so many stories of people selling platinum records and they're getting like some joke like 72 cents in royalties because they the way they crunch the books. Like, well, you owe us this, and all it's like, wait, but we're selling millions of units. Wait, what's going on?
Yeah, and I mean, even this note, like, look, when people you respect come back and respect you, that's fucking great. But their love ain't paying our fucking rent. Let's just say it right out.
I had a story published in Black Clock. It was a magazine out of Cal Arts a while back when Steve Erickson was running the program there, and it was about a aging musician living in the middle of nowhere. And I basically took every horror story I've heard from every musician I've ever known and dumped them onto one guy. Every time they were shafted by a company or a promoter or some bit of fine print that they didn't have the experience to spot, I just dumped them into one story. And I've heard more horror stories from musicians than writers, hands down.
I mean, was it almost like a dark comedy, like Bad Lieutenant, the movie, like where every scene just trumps the other one as being worse? Does it keep
not quite, but yeah, it was all of them were it wasn't so over the top like that, but it was all fairly believable. Like I didn't know like how many people get shafted by their development deals. They get this deal, like we're going to give you this much money to like do a better version of your demo, but you're actually on the hook for that.
Yeah,
it's not like
we've successfully avoided that. It's
no, but that's a shakedown.
I've done the ripping off. I mean, I've owned everything since day one. Not that that's so profitable, but nobody else is milking it either. I'm just saying.
But a lot of people have gone back as a revenge against the industry, and so I know Ozzy and a lot of Mutt Lange things gone back to re-record it. And for the average listener, they literally can't tell the difference, but they re-record it to not be locked into whatever that shakedown was initially to go through their studios.
Right now in California, there's the writer's strike, there's the hotel workers strike, there was the transportation strike. If musicians went on strike, nobody would give a shit. Writers went on strike of books, nobody would give a shit. We're kind of fucked if you do, fucked if you don't. You got to make the most of it.
Well, I mean, there is
do the work you fucking do. You do the work you do.
Well, and as you're saying, we have to do what we do, but there's also a real truth, kind of humbling truth, is if all books and all music stopped today, there's such a surplus of stuff. I mean, none of us could get through all of it. It would be like impossible. I mean,
well, with that said, I think we should have another passage read by the man himself, Craig Clevenger from Mother Howl, which I am halfway through and loving every psychedelic neo, or I like what you said about it. It's crime adjacent.
Yeah.
I'm adjacent with magical realism. Couldn't have said it better myself. Give us another dose.
Let's see if I can do. Yeah, there's a shorter one here. Let's see. This is the other.
Don't be cheap. Just go ahead and read it.
There's two narratives. So the one I read earlier was Icarus, but this is the main character, Lyle. Let's see. He curled against her in the dark and cupped her belly in his palm. He just found out his girlfriend is pregnant. The dread which had risen around him like the walls of a barren well had shrunk to a tender rise between Sarah's hips. Lyle traced the curves and dips of her body, lingered on the jut of her hip bone, and feather brushed her ribs with his fingertips. His own ribs were a dark bluish purple, and it hurt if he breathed too deeply. He had two black eyes and spat blood when he brushed his teeth. Sarah murmured something, but he only heard her say, "Sleepy." She pulled his wandering hand close and laced her fingers with his. She shifted against him beneath the covers, scratched one foot with the other, then she was still again. Lyle's faith in Sarah's self-sufficiency matched his constant concern for her. He saw this paradox as the difference between loving her and simply being in love. But the last 24 hours had upset the balance. One confluence of circumstances, appointments, detours, delays, had placed Lyle instead of Sarah on the freeway alongside a drunk driver, while another, velocity, angle, impact, had him in his own bed the next night instead of a hospital or morgue. People hurt each other daily by the millions for a few dollars or imagined insults, for petty gains far less than the satisfaction sought by those who assaulted Lyle when he was younger. They focused their pressure cooker rage onto wives and children, or set loose their lifetime of resentment onto coworkers or unfaithful lovers. Some were afraid or wanted to protect themselves, while others, Lyle knew, had no reason at all. Millions were pulled from car wrecks and burning buildings each year. Some lived long, happy lives with slow, laborious deaths, while others died in a blink from a ruptured blood vessel or a flight of stairs. Some lived in the street, bested by vices alongside those who had worked hard and governed their lives with careful judgment, but nevertheless died outside and alone. The most Lyle could offer a child were adequate provisions and an empty family tree. Passing on his inherent will to cut and run from imminent danger in such a dangerous world was akin to bequeathing his child the keys to limbo.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Gorgeous. This really is a masterwork. And, you know, I always like to go back and talk about Hubert Selby, one of my literary idols who I had the pleasure of putting on the live spoken word stage. 7 years to write Last Exit to Brooklyn, 6 months to write The Room, 16 years to write his last book. And of course, Requiem for a Dream, a nervous breakdown in a book and a great movie. That's the legacy of one of America's greatest literary heroes, not recognized enough in life nor death. UK and France, of course, understand.
The French always get it ahead of time.
The French always get it.
Yeah, you can find shelves, like entire bookstores. You go to the crime section, Jim Thompson takes up entire shelves. David Goodis, Charles Williams, they take up shelves, and you'll find 3 or 4 Black Lizard editions here, but there they are, full of shelves, entire, chunks of the bookstore.
I was just watching yesterday No Country for Old Men, based on Cormac McCarthy's writing, and Sutri still, and in a different vein than the pulp noir writers you were just mentioning, but still writing that's so violent and so beautiful about the American condition and the unfortunate methods and maneuvers people get themselves into, but Sutri being just one of the most beautiful books. And also thinking about Harry Crews and Childhood, a biography of a place, which is more like his biography, which was absolutely beautiful. Again, writers respected more. And Cormac McCarthy I think he died the day your book just came out.
Yeah, that was weird. I mean, you always want a slow news day when you know you got something coming. And I had a few people say very lovely things, like, I don't, it's difficult to pair, akin to, like, me stepping into the place, and it's like, okay, thanks, that's sweet. I even may have like reposted a few just trying to drum up noise for the book, but it's like, no, don't hang that mantle on me. I don't want, no. Show some love for the
Craig,
guy.
I'm sorry to say, but you stand alone in your own field, my
Thank you.
friend, and that's where the best writers stand, in a category that has not yet been defined.
What I do, one of the things I liked, I haven't read a lot of Cormac McCarthy. I've read a goodly chunk, mostly his later stuff. And one thing I think he understood that I was really trying to push for in Mother Howl, there's this notion of, I think we're too married to this idea of cause and effect in terms of behavior. Now, certainly it plays out. Any psychiatrist can tell you that. But what was really important to me to convey here was that this guy, maybe he was a psycho, maybe not, maybe he's a sociopath, maybe not, but we have to face the fact that some people do this because they like it. And the sooner we stop saying monster, that person's a monster, monsters aren't real. As soon as we say, no, they're people who decided to do this for their own reasons. That's what I wanted to convey with that. And that's one of the things I've liked about Cormac McCarthy. He's more graphic than I am. I'm not graphic at all, but some people just enjoy it and there's no agenda or childhood trauma behind it. There are people like that. And that's a frightening thing to think about.
Sure.
And perfectly portrayed, because we don't know the backstory in at least the movie of No Country for Old Men, where Javier Bardem's character is just such a monstrous, empty, sadistic snarker.
Yeah.
Beautifully portrayed and horribly executed. Exactly.
I should add that to the, now that I think about it, that is also a very, very faithful book to film adaptation that was very well done.
Now, what about film adaptations of any of your novels? Was there a stutter event? Was there a short film? What was, I read something about a short film based on something.
The short film was actually, that passage I read at the literary death match was the chapter 20 long in The Surgeon Birds, where Icarus gets the buckshot plucked out of his legs by the birds. That's the one I typically read when I'm on tour, and I could use air quotes here, but no one's seeing this. That's the part I read. I read that in a friend of mine, he and his buddy had a little film company. They did labor of love projects, short films for the festivals, but made their living, doing corporate videos and such. And they were there and they said, that's the scene we want to shoot. They want to make a film out of that. So we did a Kickstarter campaign. And in fact, the actor, Troy, who plays Icarus, I had abandoned the original title for this and I was on the fence trying to come up with a replacement title. Mother Howl I had as a working title, but I wasn't certain. And when he auditioned and played Icarus and said, I will still be humbly serving at the beck and call of the Mother Howl, I swear to God, there was current running through the floor when he said it. And I said, that's my title right then and there.
And so is this available to be seen?
I'm hoping they'll release it someday. We sent DVDs out. If I have a spare DVD, I'm happy to send you one. I don't know why they keep it locked up on Vimeo or wherever it is, but I wish it's not up to me. It's theirs, and I don't know if they still are in business together anymore. But Simon says I should. I would love to. It's not up to me though. So I still get a lot of
I asked you vaguely about this, but I didn't really get an answer because I think your website is really beautiful. First of all, I love old sheds, old shacks, dissolving architecture, which is the opening page. But what about the artwork on the page that's the laudatorium where there's quotes by other writers? Who did all those images?
The guilty thing here is I was just neck deep in my Mid-Journey. I was new to Mid-Journey going, wow, this is wild, and I've since really backed off of that. In fact, my bank's merged. I have a new debit card, and I keep getting notes from Mid-Journey saying your payment didn't go through, and I'm just going to let it lapse. I have, my feelings about AI have crystallized sufficiently at this point. So that's where all that came from.
Came from AI.
Yeah. I wanted a decrepit.
They're really beautiful, by the way. Excuse me. Thanks. So you have these incredible images, really, really beautiful. Especially that like mechanical one, but all of them. You have then quotes from, quotes about praise for Mother Howl, but they're really fucking nice.
I was trying to
the shed, and you said, well, maybe you took it somewhere, because I did a series of sheds that were, never seen again because they've just dissolved.
I love old decrepit, buildings like you do. And my second home out in the desert here in the Southwest, we call them jackrabbit shacks. They're everywhere and they're just beautiful. And I've taken a number of photos over the years, traveling and such, but I just didn't have anything at my fingertips. And I had plenty of old houses and decrepit places, but I needed that red door. I wanted
Right.
to bring home the red
So
door.
is the cover of Howl, is that one of your of Mother Howl, is that one of your photographs?
No, that's from the publisher. And we
But
did a
still,
lot
it
of,
could have been one of your photographs.
yeah, but it's not AI. We did a number, they sent me a number of concepts and we finally zeroed in on this. And the final version that's there, they sent me 4 different versions and the others were all night shots and kind of hinted at more horror. This one was the most neutral in terms of not really leaning on a genre. And I like the fact that you can see the title from across the room. So
that's perfect.
part of it is
So
kind of
now
mercenary on my
you're
part.
pimping away. You're doing readings
Yeah.
at bookstores, etc., which is good. You're doing this and whatever else comes your way. Now, let's talk about how long did this actually take you to write Mother Howl? Were you working on this for quite a long time? I mean, were the ideas scattershot at one point, and then you're like, okay, they're congealing now?
I was working on it for a very long time, and that's the question I get a lot. Where have you been? I was working on it for a long time because it took a while. I had the premise for it, but it took a while for everything to really crystallize together and come together. And even when the story did as a whole, I still didn't know how I was going to get to that very end line. But it's hard to maintain rhythm, a working steady rhythm when you're couch hopping. It's hard to have a routine, a productive routine when you don't know where I'm going to be sleeping. Even places where I stayed for quite a while, it still was impermanent. And I just had this feeling that any moment I could be, uprooted. So
plus you want to be courteous to people who are helping you. So it's like, hey, I need my time now. To me, it's a little like, but I'm putting you up.
I mean, so much cogitation. I mean, so much, pacing back and forth, drinking whatever, possibly smoking, looking out the window goes into writing and whatever else. I mean, whether or not you're dosing yourself with documentaries or other writing or music, I mean, it's a very elaborate game one has to play with oneself in order to sit down and get that shit going sometimes.
And I'm comfortable with that. The tricky part I found is making it clear to people I love dearly. It's like, look, because you're at home now, I know I can reach you. Like, look, if any of your employees picked up the phone as often as people expect me to, you'd fire them, or you'd be fired if you're on the phone at your job as much as people are on the phone with me. It's really difficult to convey to people, I know that maybe you see me staring out the window a lot. But
you don't realize what I'm getting.
No, I know what you mean. Like, I mean, with the creative process, even sleeping, and it is actually scientifically correct. I mean, there's so much processing going on in our brains, and problem solving when we look idle, and people don't. Some people, I guess, they don't get that. I guess I don't understand, but it's actually.
I used to write a lot of my monologues in my sleep, which is weird considering I sleep in shifts. But there was a point where I would write whole passages while sleeping.
Lydia, I'd write when I have like a 9-to-5 job in Manhattan when I first moved here like 25 years ago. I'd be like up all night, so I was tired, and on the subway home, I'd be going to this like just before you're going to be knocked out sleep zone, that haze between reality, and I would start writing music in my head, and it would be so fresh when I had to get there. I was like, oh, I'm gonna write that down, and I get that. I don't know, not to digress. It's not about me, but
well,
yeah,
it's not. It's just continuation of exactly what we're saying.
Yeah. So anyhow, going back, looking out the window. Let's.
I write everything longhand, so it's a different headspace to be in. I think it's just much more conducive to a long-term project like a novel, not the immediate gratification, the bells and whistles of a laptop. I've always been envious of musicians and visual artists who have something tactile to work with as they're creating, versus everything being in my head and having my laptop and all the bleeps and bloops there. I like having something in my hands, the scratching, messing up a page as I work. So for me, that's the really, not so much looking out the window literally, but trying to get into that headspace. And I could do it easier, working longhand. But I don't hit the ground, 6 cylinders, 8 cylinders going. It takes a while to get into that flow state I mentioned earlier. And again, that can be mistaken for staring out the window or making.
Lollygagging.
Yeah, yeah.
Beethoven would agree with you. I mean, he would always say he didn't respect musicians that wrote through an instrument. He thought that was a filter of creativity, and he would just have the staff paper and a pencil, and just whatever he was thinking was just
wow,
cranking it out. Yeah, exactly.
Well, even though I had a computer, I did write my memoir Paradoxia on a typewriter because I needed that physicality.
Typewriters are just such beautiful old machines that yeah. It's not. You mentioned naps. We were talking about No Country for Old Men earlier. I saw an interview with the Coen brothers, and one of the things they mentioned when they were asked about their work day together in their office, and they both said a lot of naps, a lot of napping goes on in the office. So I imagine they have couches that are bigger than their desk, and they spend a lot of time.
I like to nap because I have sleep maintenance disorder, which means I love sleep, but it hates me. But it doesn't matter. I'm never tired, and I get the goods in when I get the goods in. But occasional nap does a body good.
When you get into that zone, I mean, because some writers they're I'll write between 10 and 4 p.m., 10 a.m. or whatever. When you get in that zone, do you kind of just throw everything out the door that day and just keep on going, or do you stop yourself?
I always stop myself. The thing that I found very useful, I don't know if it's true or not, but it's attributed to Hemingway. You want to quit while you're hot. You want to quit while you're on a high point. It makes it a lot easier to pick up the next day. And I've always taken that to heart. I usually start by reviewing what I did the previous day and working through that, and slowly, getting the gears up to speed, and then I start working. When I'm in that headspace, it's just a blast. Like, working longhand, scratching, rewriting. I'll reshuffle the sentences over and over again, and it's hard to describe. It takes me a while. I'm not prolific. I rework things over and over again, but it's just a fun place to be, and it's really hard to describe to people.
Also, as opposed, you're with Mother Howl especially, you're juggling two very distinct characters and voices, so it's not like a lateral or a linear narrative of one character with some coming in. It's like two very distinct languages, ideologies, experiences. So that's a kind of schizophrenia.
Yeah, I've been told unprofessionally by not a medical doctor that I have some kind of, like, perhaps a synesthetic. I'm not sure if disorder is the proper way to put it. I've never gotten this checked out. I don't care. Whatever, it works. It does it for me. So I'm not sure what I was responding to. Yeah, please.
We have a variety of disorders which actually end up being ordered so that we could commit to page or stage what must be spilled out of our bloodstream and the cataclysmic catacombs of our labyrinthian psychosis. In a nutshell.
That's quite a nutshell, though.
I probably should be in a nut house for just saying that, but that was pretty good.
I really appreciate a lot of the pushing that's been done for in terms of equal representation across everything, race, gender, everything, and the term neurodiverse that's come up. I really like it. I really like the idea that okay, maybe there's a baseline of functionality a brain needs, but I think at least some of us are getting more accepting to the idea that this little track we call normal is horseshit. If your brain works in a certain way, unlike everybody else's, it may be to your detriment. It may not be. It may be to other people's detriment. But that's their problem.
More so likely, yes.
Yeah, it's their problem. But it's this idea of normal, or why can't you be normal, or why am I not normal? I really like that. That's slowly eroding.
Normality is for other people to inhabit. We will continue to be And you know what? There is no definition. So fuck you. You just can't you can call me anything you want, but it's not going to stick because there is no finite definition for what we are existing in the creative realms that we exist in. And henceforth, in our generosity, distribute occasionally to other people.
I don't know. I don't recall exactly where I read this, but I remember reading about the notions we have of like physicality, body, like height, weight. Here's what a healthy adult is actually based on a sampling of British soldiers in like pre-World War II. I think it was even pre-World War I. So every notion we have about, you know, what a healthy adult human looks like is based on a decades old study based on a really narrow sample of white adult super fit males. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. And you figure how much worse then is our notion of what is, you know.
Oh, it goes throughout all this stuff. Like, so I just went to this Stravinsky ballet, and Balanchine was the choreographer when it was premiered in the 50s. And I read that he was the guy, he was obsessed with the ballerina being this almost like the body shape of an 11-year-old boy, but like super size, but really skinny. And that's what influenced the whole runway model to be that kind of stick figure. And that became like this norm. And that was just his obsession. That's all it was.
It was one guy, huh? That
was the big guy that triggered that. Yeah, Balanchine. Yeah, exactly. It was like, and then that became the new norm, quote unquote. I mean,
Even within the norms, there is no norms. So this is what the secret to all existence is. And anybody that wants to conform, and this is a big problem, especially with teenagers on the internet, thinking there is a specific ideal that they'd like to achieve if only they did this, that, and the other thing, which is total bullshit. And it's just another trap set up by the corporate crap masters to bait you into whatever clothes, makeup, website, underwear that these fraudulent demons embodied in surgically enhanced existence want you to think will make you perfect. Bullshit.
I like what Nick Offerman said. I forget what he was.
I love Nick Offerman.
Love him. And one of his stage specials, he said something like, "The thing you love doing the most is the sexiest thing about you. The thing that you enjoy, the thing that you engage in, is what makes you sexy." And I just thought that was beautiful. Really well said.
No comment.
No comment. I can think of all types of horrible things people love doing.
Okay, fair point. There is that, but I think his point is being that, like, you know what, you know, like you said, rather than chase, you know.
No, I know what you meant. I know.
Yeah. But that is true. Yeah, people like doing horrible things. Again, that's, you know, hence the book here. But yeah,
like this guy likes to binge eat at McDonald's. Like that's the sexiest thing about
let me take it one step further. One of the sexiest things anyone could be is a frickin' individual. Okay, there we go. That's it. I mean, that's what makes someone attractive.
Yeah, I concur.
All right, whatever. Let's say we concur. That's why we're here. That's what the Lydian spin is all about. We collect these individuals, all of them geniuses, in my opinion. So far, we have about 208 geniuses on this website, connected by references, suggestions, friends. There is a connective tissue still in, I don't even want to call it the underground. I'm going to call it the other ground of people involved in music, writing, literature, visual arts, filmmaking, who still relentlessly and stubbornly, to spite or in spite of public opinion, demand, or popularity, will continue to do exactly what we fucking do. Love it or loathe it, don't care. We're still fucking doing it. And with that, I'd like to say, do you have anything else to say? Craig Clevenger, Mother Howl, out now.
Oh God, I'm sure I will think of something witty, mic drop-ish as soon as we're all done here. I'm just, you know, I've been out for a long time and everything's changed. Like, you know, right now, this book tour, with air quotes, has been more podcasts than anything. So it's a different world now since the last time I was published. But I am perpetually astounded at the reception this book has had. I mean, as far as PR goes, you know, personally for me, it's a lot like pushing air uphill. There's so many things I wish would happen, I want to do, and I'm frustrated, but at the same time, like, you know, you two here, like the kind of reception I'm getting when I thought I was a ghost. I thought I just ceased to exist in the mind as everyone else. So the fact that the people are this enthusiastic just really has me doing, you know, mental backflips, as it were.
Well, you know, I would think it was a compliment if you had any fucking competition, but you don't, buddy. You stand in your own field, and
You are
I'm
kind.
enjoying plowing through this fucking book. That's all I can say about it. You stand alone. We stand alone. That's why we're here together.
I appreciate it. I like anything else I would just say. I long ago gave up any notion of kicking out like a David Foster Wallace size slab. I would rather write a book that someone wants to read over and over again, that they get something new each time. So that's the plan there.
You did it, my
So
friend.
hopefully that
You
happens.
did it.
I'm really moved and touched by the enthusiasm of you all here. So
go out and order it. It's there on Amazon for all to buy, and also live bookstore performances. The next one being July 14th at Book Soup in Los Angeles with Nolan Knight. More to follow. Thank you very much, Craig Clevenger. This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and
Craig.
Tim Dahl. Thank you.
thank you all.